This episode contains conversations surrounding opioid use, overdose, depression, suicidal thoughts. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to this season of Alter Ego. We are starting season 1 with the topic of addiction in Butler County. Conversations on the physical side of addiction, trauma, the neuroscience, mental health, and stigma surrounding addiction. Experts, resources, and stories from people who have fought addiction head-on. I am your host, Laura Crago. Let's keep the conversation going. Now a word from our sponsor, BetterHelp. For a long time, I suffered with depression and anxiety. I had tried therapy before, but struggled finding a therapist I connected with until I found BetterHelp. That's why I am so excited to share BetterHelp's mission to make therapy more affordable and more accessible, because finding a therapist can be hard, especially when you're limited to the options in your area. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online. Remote therapy sessions, and by filling out a few questions, BetterHelp can match you to a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. Click the link in description and receive 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. And by clicking that link, you support this channel. Plus, you can easily switch to a new therapist at no additional cost without stressing about insurance, who's in your network, or anything like that. I was struggling for a long time, and BetterHelp was where I found my therapist, Whitney, who I still see weekly for almost 2 years now. So, if you're struggling like I was, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in description or go to betterhelp.com/alterego. That's betterhelp.com/alterego. There's no better time than now to start your mental health journey. Thank you again, BetterHelp, for supporting this channel. It's not up to me to judge them based off of what they're going through and how they're reacting to the situation. Mm-hmm. For me, it's just like, I want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to find their ultimate, whatever that is. And another woman that I spoke to who's sharing her personal story, she's like, I've been in the same job for 4 years, and that's the first time I can ever say that, and how that makes her feel good. But the one thing she said was, when she was doing drugs, she thought that's who she was, right? Mm-hmm. And you made that comment when you first did it. You're like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to feel.
Right.
And apparently we don't realize that we're missing something, right? And she's like, I didn't know what true happiness was. I didn't know what it felt like to be happy.
Yes.
She's like, and I do now.
And like contentment.
Yes.
It was so
contentment. Yes. Just being content, right? Mm-hmm. And being able to, if a situation happens right at work and everyone's like, oh, just forget about it. And you're like, but I
don't.
I can't. I can't.
Yeah.
Like, I need to work through it and understand it.
Yes.
And
I'm a talker.
Oh, I'm a talker too.
Share it with someone. Mm-hmm. The second I speak words, it takes the pain away from it.
It's like when you carry around a backpack full of crap, right? And you just keep putting and it just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And sometimes you just need to take it off and you just need to start unpacking it. Mm-hmm. You're just like unpacking it. That's kind of how I look at things. Mm-hmm. When I teach a yoga class, I'm like, hey, listen, you probably carried a bunch of stuff in here with you today. Mm-hmm. Like, you're either going to take it and you're going to set it aside, or you're going to start unpacking it.
Yes.
You have to, right? And that's human.
Yes.
And that's where we all need to realize, like, everyone is going through that.
Yes. Yes. And I love that you said about like the social connectedness. I really feel that like that is part of the solution, right? Because even if you're not physically isolated, like there's just so much that's attached to like substance use. Some of the behaviors, they force us to draw boundaries with our loved ones. And that's very individual too. People need to do what they can be comfortable with, what they can live with, person to person. But like we draw those boundaries, and then the person does end up isolated. And so like the whole experience is like, because I use drugs, I am not loved. Because I use drugs, I can't be trusted. And it gets deeper and deeper ingrained the more and more time passes. But when you said about the social, like the connectedness piece, it takes me kind of to thinking about treatment. And so following this overdose, I was definitely looking for softened consequences. I didn't know what to do. And so I wasn't necessarily seeking help, but I think it's really important that we have to like eliminate this rhetoric of like people need to want it badly enough, or they won't be able to recover until they're ready. 'Cause I mean, I always had this level of ambivalence, and that's what a lot of us do in this addictions nursing space or in the addiction treatment space and medical. You know, we're working with a person's their change, their level of readiness to change, and we're working to increase their internal motivation. At this point, I had nothing intrinsically that was motivating for me. It was all external. Like I want to keep my career. I want to try to keep life as I know it. And so I found the Professional Health Monitoring Program on Google and PNAP, the Pennsylvania Nurse Peer Assistance Program. And I left a message. I figured the hospital's going to report me. I can self-report first, and that will, quote unquote, look good, right? And I think, what else looks good? I decide to go to my first 12-step meeting. Now, first 12-step meeting outside of nursing school. In psych nursing, they did require us to go to one Alcoholics Anonymous meeting and one Narcotics Anonymous meeting, both of which had to be open meetings, not closed, so that we could sit and observe and learn from that. But it is very different going as an observer than it was going in that moment of complete brokenness. It was the spiritual retreat weekend, and I had no idea. So I walked into a room, and there were 3 other people there, just 3. I'm like, am I in the right place? Like, am I going to out myself by being like, I'm here for the that meeting, you know, the XA meeting? Yeah. And so they're like, yeah, you're in the right place. But it was the perfect environment because it was small and intimate enough that I could dump a little bit and also get used to all of this like weird unknown stuff. Like, what are all these readings? Like, what key tags, coins, what are all of this? I have no idea. I don't understand it. And so then they were like, hey, do you want to come to the meeting tomorrow? And I was like, what do you mean? They have one of these like every day or something? I had no idea. You're like, whoa. I was so naive. Like, you can go to a meeting like any time of day if you've got the means to get there or the technology to access it. Wow. Period. Like, there are resources out there if you're into that kind, if you're into the 12-step, right? Yes. Because that is a thing. Yeah. Yes. Then Monday came, right? And PNAP calls me back, and they do a quick assessment. They're like, yeah, we recommend you go to treatment. And I don't want to be seen as like non-compliant, right? Like, there's another term we label people with all the time. And so I went to, I said, you know, how long do I need to go? And they're like, it'll probably be 28 days. And I said, you know, when do I need to go? They said today or tomorrow. And I said, well, if I go today, does it count as one of the 28 days? And they said, yeah. And I was like, all right, I'll go tonight. And so packed up and went to treatment, and it was there. The social connectedness piece, you know, in XA meetings, oftentimes you'll hear about the therapeutic value of a person helping another person when we both have those same shared lived or living experiences. And that's what I started to recognize was so healing. I mean, they did joke around and call me Nurse Jackie, of course. Ha ha ha. Yeah. I'm sorry. It was pretty funny though. It was pretty funny.
Here's the thing. We talked about laughter in an episode I did the other day, and how that's, you know, in this is a serious thing that we're talking about, but being able to be in a place, right, where you can laugh and you can smile.
Yeah. Kind of, sometimes we do have to have a little bit of like self-deprecating humor about things, and you know, everyone has their own process,
but it's your journey, it's your story, and that's what we're here for. So I just want to make that very clear to anyone who's listening or watching, that, you know, I think it's just me being mindful of what we're talking about, right?
Absolutely.
And sensitive to your experience and what you went through and how hard you have worked to get to where you are. And having met you and sitting here with you and just listening to your story of like when you were getting back into everything and getting your licensing back and working for that and having to prove yourself when it's like, wait, didn't I already do this? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like you had to do that and now you've got to do it again.
Yeah, I had to reestablish everything.
In a whole different, you know, capacity. But then also then now there's the stigma, right?
Yes.
So when you go to get these jobs and how long that was, right?
Yes.
How many jobs you applied
Yes.
for. And then the minute you told them, you'd see these shifts, whether
Yes.
it was, you know,
Yes.
and just what that has to feel like and how that's something you had to be prepared for, right?
Yeah. And there was so much that I wasn't prepared for as well, right? Like,
I'm sure.
You know, I wasn't prepared to be knocked so much off my high horse that I still have trouble today with my confidence. I didn't expect to be on the front page of the newspaper, which was really
and you
hard.
talked, yeah.
I think it's important to talk about the challenges in recovery. So I want to kind of like speed through some of my, like, here's what I did. Like, I went to treatment. I went to partial after that. I went to intensive outpatient. You know, I really started to find some acceptance in those treatment programs and become comfortable with therapy, because that was really vital for me, and still is, because I am still in therapy today. I've got an appointment today at 3:00, you know, like, it is really important for me, and I continue to access those services when I need them.
Yeah.
But I started to realize it was about the similarities, not the differences. It didn't matter what drug we used or how we used it or what depths we went to obtain our drugs, or, you know, get them, use them, whatever. It was about the shared pain. It was about the healing. It was about the vulnerability. It was about just being able to say, like, sit next to someone who is an outsider to society too, and be loved by them, right? Yeah. So I had a lot of consequences as well. I lost my job out of that. I had some legal implications, and of course that's where, like, the newspaper article comes up. It was one of my biggest challenges in early recovery, external to navigating relationships with family. And so I, of course, was under investigation. A lot of this stuff takes time. So I'm in treatment while the ball's rolling on that side. The hospital's looking into things. You know, I'm getting enrolled in my state's monitoring program to try to maintain my license. So we have alternative to discipline programs at the Pennsylvania state level for certain license types. And so they allow people, and they do disciplinary processes too, and monitor people over time, require certain things of them, drug screens, all that. So I was doing all of that, and had to, all of a sudden got a call one day from this, you know, narcotics agent from the Attorney General's office. And, like, thank God I didn't answer my phone, because at that time I was applying for jobs. I'd just gotten permission to return to work because I was about, like, 4 months into recovery. And so, you know, here I am in the midst of 90 some applications, like I said, 30 some interviews before I got a job offer. And it could have been a job offer calling. It could have been, you know, setting up an interview. So thank goodness I didn't answer. I listened to his message, and, like, he's describing my house. He knows what it looks like. He's like, oh, unique little, like, setup there. It's kind of like angled. I like the way of the gray and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, he was at my house. And so I knew then I had to get a lawyer and do all of that, and met with him. And there was a lot of stigma there too that I really have to mention, because I remember one thing he said to me was, yeah, we've got that bag of fentanyl and all that IV tubing down in evidence in the basement. And, you know, we got it triple bagged because we're afraid it's going to burn a hole in the ground. Get out of town here, brother. Like, you know, like, that's we put it in our body. It doesn't burn a hole in the ground. That's not, like, stop making it so sensationalized.
Yes.
It is not. And even when I access OVR, right, like the Office for Vocational Rehab, my OVR counselor, they were helping me, you know, get back on my feet, pay for drug screens and whatnot while I was unemployed. And that OVR counselor said, why fentanyl? Why couldn't you just have a beer, smoke a joint? How bizarre of a thing to say to someone in recovery who now is on an abstinence-based journey. And, you know, like, the misconceptions that there are some substances that are worse than others. Like, we have to understand that, like,
and again, like, you had
both of those things could become just as problematic.
Thank you.
Alcohol is one of the biggest, most dangerous drugs that kills the most people. That and nicotine are two big ones. The reason it doesn't get all the attention, though, is because it's in for the long game. It takes you out later. It takes time. Over and over. Your cancer will get you. Something will get you. Right? Yeah. It doesn't take us like opioids do that knock out our breathing. And then we die right then and there. Yeah. Right. So, like, that's why these drugs get these different identities attached to them, but like anything can be just as problematic. If I drank too much water right now, I can overdose and die on water.
Yes.
In fact, didn't people do that in that podcast, or not a podcast? It was like a radio show. Weren't we talking about that before? And I mentioned it. You know, there's a radio show. It was a contest to like drink as much water without using the bathroom. And, you know, a girl died because she overdosed on water. So like, I am sometimes careful to say, like, when I'm talking about overdose, I think immediately we think opioids, but like we can overdose on other things. We can overamp. People can overamp on stimulants.
Yep.
You know, you have a, you know, alcohol poisoning is an alcohol overdose.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, for sure.
That's what it is.
I mean, you even hear of stories of people taking certain supplements, right? Like I've heard stories of, and I don't remember what it's called, but it like changed the color of their skin or something because they were taking so much. It was some.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you eat a lot of carrots. It can, like, I think the carotene in it, is that what it is? That can change your skin color.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like become toxic, right? And essentially
everything is about balance. Everything is about balance. If you use drugs, it is about balance. If you're in recovery, it's about balance. If you're trying to work on your mental health, it's about balance. And I think that's important too. Like when we talk about like character defects, when I went to treatment, I was given this list of character defects, and they said, go through this, circle which ones you identify with. And I see things on there. Perfectionism is the one example I use. So it is a character defect of mine. It does hold me back. There were times in college I'd spend hours making flashcards and never have a chance to study them, right?
Yeah.
But
been there.
Perfectionism is also one of my greatest strengths. So I challenge the idea of character defects as actually being strengths when used appropriately. You know, and some may not be as obvious, you know, if it's like lying, like I'm addicted to lying or whatever, you know, like maybe it's you're convincing. That's a strength, to be convincing. So how do you use that, you know? So I think a strengths-based approach is really helpful.
Yes.
In fostering purpose for people to say like, wow, like I could use, these are leadership characteristics.
Well, because it's also giving them that positive mindset, right? Rather than being like, well, these are the things you're doing wrong.
Yes.
You're like, I already know I did something wrong to be here, right? I already know that I messed up, and and then it's this feeling of like failure, right? You have this immense failure, and those are triggers for me. Like if someone brings up a time in my life where I felt like a failure, and I was doing something, they're like, oh, well, you were, and it's like, yeah, that is what I was doing at the time to pay my bills, to survive. Yeah, that's what I was doing. But that doesn't define who I am.
Right.
It was just, it's such an interesting thing, like talking about triggers and trauma. And, you know, I get into that in other episodes, but that's interesting. And whenever I talked with, I keep bringing up Dr. Brophy and Joe and Alyssa, you know, we talked a lot about, I lost my train of thought. This is what keeps happening, right?
I know. Because we have so much we want to say.
We do have so much we want to say. And we're
such an important
topic. Coming up on probably time. Here. I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, oh yeah. We got, but we'll scratch that because I can't remember it because I really I think you have given so much. First of all, you've given so much of yourself and shared so much that's really, I don't think there's enough people out there that probably say it enough, but like how brave you are just to be where you are now and talk about it and to go out and to be emotional because of course it's an emotional thing.
I have to let those parts of myself be free because if I try to block out the uncomfortable emotions on this side of the spectrum, I start blocking out the other ones on this side. So by experiencing like extreme pain, I feel like I open myself up for extreme joy as well, right? Like that's the balance. That's the yin, the yang. This I love that kind of like holistic ideology. Yeah. But you said brave, and I appreciate that. I don't feel brave. There are parts of this that make me feel like I do need to have like the courage, and I've like worked up a lot of that. But I feel this sense of ethical and moral responsibility to share my story because I'd mentioned the newspaper article and how that was so challenging to be on the front page and to have my story told from one point of view, just from, you know, what's filed in one quote from the people at the hospital, right? And so, and there were inaccuracies in the article and also things that didn't necessarily elaborate on like the purpose of adding it. Like the last line was, you know, as of the time of this article, you know, her nursing license is still active. And then of course, social media, the comment section, that was the challenging part, especially. But when, you know, that now I lost my train of thought because I started thinking emotionally about how I felt in that moment, and the challenges in recovery. That was really, a really tough thing to get through because it felt so exposed. And it really wasn't even like as much the newspaper as it was social media.
Yeah.
And the comment sections and the things people said, like, should have just let her die, better off dead. Wow. You know, what a waste of Narcan. You know, just different things like that.
Yeah.
I did have some friends who were like trying to, you know, defend me and whatnot. But there's only so much you can do with the keyboard warriors who hide behind their screens. And so there was the piece of being brave, to come circle back to that. That's what we were talking about. And so I didn't have the chance to maintain my anonymity because of that.
Yeah, of course.
That was stolen from me. Mm-hmm. And so because I felt like, you know, anyone who Googles my name can figure this out and find it out, and people know, I'm going to use that to my advantage, because I know people in this community who are in really big positions that cannot share that part of themselves because they aren't safe to do so, or because it would affect something because of the stigma, or sometimes just because they're more effective at getting things done without that identity attached to them.
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, there are people who work at like the state board level who might be in recovery that are trying to make these programs better, but don't say to the state board they're in recovery because someone might perceive then they have an ulterior motive and, you know, things like that. So I used that as an opportunity, and I appreciate that you perceive me as brave. But I felt like it was, I have to carry the message. And if I'm going, and with the privilege, right, I am given these opportunities because I'm well connected and because I get involved and because I go to conferences that I can afford and pay for. So many layers of privilege to unpack, but I feel like it's my responsibility to use that, to speak to it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, because at the end of the day, it comes down to, you know, you said, why did I survive? And you know why you survived.
Yes.
You know, you're like, there's no reason why I shouldn't have all of these issues. And it's something to be really commended, that it's like, that's like a purpose right there. That's like you were being watched over. Someone made sure that you were still here to tell this story. And that's what, to me, that's what makes you brave. Because, you know, there still was that opportunity to be like, yeah, even though I survived and even though I did this, I'm just gonna go do something else, and I'm gonna, because that's a real thing. I mean, that's
okay,
and that's okay, because there are,
you
know, I can understand someone leaving, having the experience that you have had, and being like, you know what, I need to just completely in order for them to survive, right? In order for them to recover or to live a life and find something. And maybe that's just what it was, right, for them. So it's really letting people write their own story, like being the narrator.
Yes.
And I think that's what's hard sometimes, is when all of this judgment comes from all this, you know, and you're like, okay, I get it. You read something, you've made an assumption, or you've determined how it makes you feel, and you would never do something like that. And it's like, but unless you're in that situation, can you speak to it to say, well, actually, I mean, I've been in those situations where I'm like, never thought I would be in a situation like this, and never thought I'd find myself. But you know what? I'm coming from a whole different perspective. These are the facts that I have, you know, and it's my story.
Yes.
And it's hard, because that's the world that we live in. Unfortunately, we live in a very judgmental world. Things that we can't talk about, but you know, people have their opinions and the things that they believe. But then it's like, but you're judging me based off of just a little snippet of information, never having a conversation with me or having met me, and also being the type of person that is forgiving and is like, at some point you've got to let this thing that's weighing so heavy on you, you've got to find a way to let it go, or you've got to find a way to use it to do good, right?
Yes. Yeah. It helps me. It helps me in my recovery, both working in this field and making it pretty much like, you know, my whole life, my personal passions, you know, doing advocacy on the side, going to DC and doing lobbying, getting additional education. My goodness, I wish I could just sit and learn forever, because I just constantly feel like there's more and more. And I think that's why I'm so passionate also about sharing what I've learned with people and helping them understand, making that tie. Because right now we've got peer services, right? Like, it's amazing. Certified recovery specialists are quite, in my opinion, the solution to the system, right? The lived experience. But there's a gap, and we need to help these individuals to fit into this like square medical system hole.
Yeah.
So like, you've got, you know, clinical documentation, you've got all this, but we need to help them to understand, so they can tie in that lived experience with the book knowledge, right? Because there's that clash of, all you know, you just book knowledge. You don't know me. You don't know what I went through. But then you have the lived experience, and sometimes there's misunderstandings and lack of information, and, you know, or maybe they were taught the wrong thing. The amount of people that I see, you know, say things like, oh, that, you know, it's the naloxone and the Suboxone that, you know, keeps you from, that throws you into withdrawal if you take it too soon. And like, there's so much about that. And it's actually the buprenorphine itself. That naloxone was added in just to make people feel a little better about if someone injected it, and it doesn't really even work, to be honest. And so like, it's just, it's a public image thing. It's just like, oh, insurers will like this more. So now we pay for a more expensive film medication than just the mono product because of public image and stigma. So it's just, it's yeah, it's like, it comes full circle. But I think that bridging that gap's really important. So having the lived experience plus the knowledge.
Yes, absolutely.
World changers. And I've seen so many people in our very own community go through this process themselves. And it's the most beautiful thing to watch these people who had this like kind of like blinders on view of recovery, being abstinence-based, and then watching it blossom, and then seeing them helping so many people. And it's challenging, right? There's ideologies that even now, like, sometimes I'm like, you know, I have a friend who is going through some stuff with their significant other, and so it's challenging, because immediately, like, that first thought for me is still always that stigmatizing, same as the public commenters, all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm able to check myself and say, okay, what are the facts here? What would actually, you know, like, help? And also, like, I'm not there in the scenario. I'm not the person going through it. So that individual needs to be the one to say what they need and learning what they need. Sometimes it's about discovering it. Sometimes you don't know.
Sure. And I think with that, like, you know, as we get older, right, a lot of us learn to take a step back out of situations and not immediately just jump on that bandwagon, right? Be like, oh, I'm going to jump on this bandwagon because that's what they said and that's what they told me.
Yeah.
I've sort of learned to be like, but what's the other side of this? And what's like really going on here? And talking. It's, for me, the biggest thing is like, you need to talk to someone, and you need to talk to someone, and then you need to talk together with someone. And you know, there needs to be a lot of talking.
Yeah.
Lots of talking.
Therapy is beautiful, guys. Therapy is beautiful. We talked a lot about like the substance use stuff, but I just kind of want to wrap up with how important the mental health piece is.
Yes.
And I've mentioned that in recovery, the mental health piece is vital for me now, right? But I have had very difficult experiences in recovery. I've talked about the newspaper article, and haven't said it explicitly, but after that, I was so ashamed. I felt like the world would be better off without me. I wanted to die. I had this, you know, passive suicidal ideation. I didn't have a plan. I just wished I would die. And if I hadn't had like my coping mechanisms and all of the support system I had built up in that first, because I was 6 months in recovery, 6 months of abstinence at this time when this was published.
Wow.
Because it's not public information until charges are filed. And that's how long legal system stuff takes sometimes, you know. But I've had other experiences like that too. I had a very difficult first trimester of my pregnancy with my son. And I think it was both hormones, mental health, alongside the socio-political climate we found ourselves in during a global pandemic.
Yep.
And so, you know, it was extremely challenging. I had suicidal thoughts then. And I am incredibly grateful for my husband, who has supported me so much.
Aw.
He's an angel. He's an angel. In my early recovery, a family member was speaking with him and talking about different options and what he should do. And he said, I promised her in sickness and in health, and she's sick. And that's what it's all about right there.
Yeah.
Things are not perfect. We get on each other's last nerve, but he is my bedrock.
Yeah.
And he holds me down when I am losing my mind, and I lose my mind still today. My son.
There's some more.
Oh, thank you. My son, I was never prepared for this tiny human to point out so many of my own shortcomings.
Oh,
but boy, they do. And especially with like behaviors, but like I'm out here, I'm about to be, like first generation cycle breaker. And that doesn't mean I have to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I just have to continue to try to be better.
Yeah.
And that's what we do. And so I think the world is going to get better, but we're having conversations like we are here today. We're talking about things like overdose, talking about things like suicide, because this is really important. We're in a place where mental health is going to be talked about more and more. We saw how the pandemic affected everyone. And I think we're still in this like survival mode where we're all starting to like unfreeze and realize these micro traumas and traumas that we experience.
Yes.
And so that's really important and ties right back into my recovery story, because mental health I still struggle sometimes with suicidal ideation. It's been a minute. I'm very lucky. I am glad to take a medication, destigmatize meds. It's okay if your neurotransmitters are store-bought. You do it.
Mine are. Yeah. Mine have been since March of 2023.
Yep. And I'm good with it. I've been on different medications here and there. I adjusted doses during pregnancy, decided not to adjust back down after having my son 2 years ago. And, I feel like I'm in a good place, but it is all constantly balanced. And all I'm doing every single day to stay in recovery is realizing when I'm starting to teeter too far on something or another and reestablish that balance in my life.
Yeah.
That is what it's all about.
Yes.
And it's not perfect. It's ugly. It's messy. But I wouldn't be able to do if it weren't for having purpose in life, people who gave me a chance and gave me that purpose again, and people who still continue to lift me up. And now I'm working to do the same with others who are, following similar professional pathways, and I want to lift them up. I want to, if you want to room with me at the conference to save money and so you can afford it, let's do it.
Yeah.
I want other people to have that same experience. And also my husband, I wouldn't be able to do it. He's so level-headed. He's such a good people reader. Sometimes I hate it because he knows more about me than I know about myself, but he's an angel. He's an angel. And so finding supports is really important.
Yeah.
And then another challenge for me was, changing my recovery pathway to non-abstinence. I'm no longer abstinent from every substance, and it works for me right now. I can't predict tomorrow. I don't know what that'll be like, but I know I have a network of people around me who I can go to for non-judgmental support to be able to say like, hey, I'm not loving my relationship with, nicotine now. I kind of want to quit it. I'm not loving my relationship with alcohol. I kind of want to, make sure that I'm only drinking 4 times a year, whatever. It can be what you want it to be. And so I'm very lucky that I have that. But it's definitely, it scares people. And the reason so many people dig their heels in is because we feel like it's a gamble, right?
Yes.
Or rolling the dice. And anytime you use a substance, history or not, is a gamble. You just, again, what will you be like me? Will you have the stars aligned and find a solution in the Band-Aid? You really need sutures,
You're so well spoken. I feel really honored that you sat down with me. I mean, our first conversation, you were like, yes, let's do this. Ken was the one that suggested you. And I remember emails kept bouncing back, and I was like, Ken, these emails keep bouncing back. I need you to get through to Rachel. I have to talk to her. And just every time I've talked to you, you're smiling and you're like sunshine. There's you've got this sunshine about you. So
thank you. It's an aura I'm working on. Sometimes it's a little dark.
Yeah, I have that too though. Sometimes they call me Wednesday Addams. I usually wear all black.
Black is great though.
So
black's easy.
Right? Yeah. It is.
It's like the ultimate neutral.
It is.
Everything.
And I don't know. I just have a lot of things that I'm like, oh, that's cute. And it's all black. So that's
Same.
sort of, so today we're a little bit of color today. Cream, not really. But just thank you so much for coming on and talking with me. We have a lot of really great resources and information. And I know someone, and I don't think it's just going to be one person. I know that a lot of people are going to hear your story and feel very inspired and supported and not alone. So,
and if you want to contact me, I would love to provide like some of my social media handles.
We'll put that in the captions. All of her social media handles will be in the captions. On YouTube, we'll have it. Everything's going to be on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. Perfect. So we will include all of that. So if you want to reach out to Rachel, please do that. I'm sure she'd love to.
LinkedIn's great for me. And also Twitter or X. Just at my name is Rachel. Easy.
I do have to do the X one. I keep forgetting that it's that now, but
it's Twitter. It's
it's Twitter.
Sorry, Elon.
Not really, though. That was amazing. We both were like, not really, actually. We don't feel sorry for you. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to cut that. We won't cut the thing we had, but maybe I don't feel sorry for him.
It's okay. It's just an opinion.
We're like
living his best life.
Like, do your thing, bro. But like, we do kind of like the little bird and Twitter. Yeah. It just seemed like a happier place to go. And well, I don't know. Maybe not.
It was.
I one time corrected someone's grammar during the 2020 election. I put YOU''RE, and they came for me. And I was like, well, if you're going to have the opinion that you have about education,
touche,
then use the right.
I'm guilty of being the grammar police.
Oh, bad. But I won't. And I put a little asterisk next to it so they know that. And I just put that. I don't put, it's actually, I just put the thing, and she was not happy with me. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm not doing that again. Yeah. I was like, I don't need to do that.
I have, you ever hear the spoon theory?
No, what's the spoon theory?
So spoon theory has kind of come out of individuals with chronic illnesses, right? Like sometimes you wake up and you only have so many spoons. Different days you might have different amounts of spoons, right? Spoons are your energy level, what you have to give. There are some activities that you can get spoons from. So I have people in my life that are spoon givers, right? I know that they refuel me, but I only have so many spoons to give. And sometimes I don't have a spoon for the troll. I'm not giving the spoon away to the internet troll. My loved ones deserve my spoons more than that internet stranger.
Like that. I like that.
I'm big into the spoon theory. Okay. I'm big into metaphors. They help me understand the world. I feel like I have, neurosparkly. That's my neurosparkly.
I like that. Neurosparkly and spoons.
Yes.
All right. Well, Rachel, thank you so much. You were amazing.
Thank you.
And yes, follow us. We have Alter Eagle Podcast on Instagram. Still working on X. Twitter. We're just gonna throw that out there. Thank you again for joining us for another episode of Alter Eagle. Thank you for tuning in to Alter Eagle. Join me every Monday and Wednesday for new episodes. Be sure and click the link in bio for 10% off your first month of therapy through BetterHelp. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode, and follow us on Instagram at Alter Eagle Podcast. Until next time, stay safe, stay hopeful, stay kind.